we'll go back to your company. So you were having these struggle sessions. You decided to define these definitions. What happened next?
Do you want to share anything?
I'm enjoying
someone
conversation from
a brick flew through the window.
Curtis is the happy philosopher over there. Did you
I can step in just to say again that I want to, again, dialogue. I appreciate being here with you guys because having rich dialogue where there's no victim-villain narratives, where you're honestly seeking the truth because we're on the same team, the human team. I'd love to just point out, as we describe this, just again, that I love these people. They're intelligent. They are caring. They're living consistently with their convictions, and that's exactly how I want people to live. And so the process for us went from when we started, when we had to push pause and say, hey, okay, in terms of gender pronouns, like, can't we find a way in which everybody can not have to violate their conscience and be able to be here together? And the guidelines and the way in which we handle that would allow everybody to show up and learn and take advantage of that. So in terms of when we did hit pause and then entering into those sessions, I mean, that we were trying to define terms. We were trying to not just miss each other, same words, different dictionary, defining words. And then also we started to define the process, and we look for tools. So one tool that's great, which actually we haven't had a chance to properly embrace you guys in the Aloha spirit and give you some swag from our organization, but I tucked a book in there that was really helpful for us. Our board chair, who actually does professional conflict mediation, he suggested a book called Crucial Conversations. And so defining what is dialogue, how do we actually have conversations together where you can be communicating the same definitions of terms and you can hear each other, and actually it's kind of fun because they use the term that what you're doing in good dialogue is that you are filling the pool of the common understanding. You want a deep pool of being informed, so you're trying to make it a place where some people aren't just being a fire hydrant and just like overrunning the conversation, and then other people are like shut off and not contributing to it. You want everybody to relax and be able to contribute so that you've got a deep shared pool of meaning for you then to make informed decisions around. So that's where we were trying to go to, was just
we basically said we need to do it. We need to do this. The communication hasn't been healthy because there are these narratives forming that like we're these oppressive people or somebody is oppressing and causing harm. And there hasn't ever actually been a concrete accusation of harm. So that's not psychologically safe. Because then the person who's being accused is like, oh, how do I rectify it? I don't know what I did. And there's nothing concrete. You're not telling me what I did. So how can I apologize?
What's actionable about that?
Yeah.
Right.
Besides everybody being laden with the sense of like, I'm sorry you're feeling hurt and I don't even know what I did. Like, so that's something in terms of defining psychological safety, and where not only the same definition of the term, but also processes where I love it that, just having a term like a crucial conversation where emotions run high, where there's high stakes, it means something. It was very helpful for us to just say, hey, we want that to become the norm in our culture, like at the organization, that when there is something that matters, you're not going to hide that and have sideline conversations with other people. If it's related to somebody, then they get to take part in that conversation. And then it also set up a process, a framework by which you knew that if somebody approached you and said that I need to have a crucial conversation, there's, that I think in the Chinese character for crisis is it's danger and opportunity. And I think that applies in terms of these crucial conversations where it's like there's danger that something is at issue here, but there's an opportunity to deal with it, as opposed to what was happening was there was a lot of conflict that was never brought to the surface, and then that wasn't able to be dealt with in a healthy way. So those sessions were about us trying to adopt tools that will allow us to have this conversation properly. And we did continue to dialogue things, people didn't leave immediately. We got a chance to actually hear from everybody and fill that shared pool. And then what I think brings us back to this conversation about critical theory and whatever we want to call what's going on right now, that is that people started to leave the dialogue. And that was the question in terms of if it wasn't.
So you wore them out. They couldn't handle it. They weren't gaining ground, and they're like, I'm out of here.
To some degree, but it was, the experience that I had that was just, disappointing was that in sticking to principles, until you can point out something that we actually concretely can change, then to me, we haven't done the work together. And there were...
So they never said, here's what I want you to do?
No, they did.
You go ahead.
No, there were a lot of different points where, open letters were written, for instance, with demands in them.
Like, so what were some of the demands?
Just all the stuff that you're hearing at all the companies. Like, we need to be more aware of diversity. Maybe we need some outside training. We need to be aware of other perspectives. We need certain kinds of diversity on the governing board, this, that, and the other. And so it's like, all of these things are great. Like, we can, none of this is something we're opposed to, but it's the manner in which you're approaching us that's completely unprofessional and inappropriate. That you would go and like write this letter and then like present it at a board meeting, like kind of guerrilla warfare style or something. It's just like, this is not.
But so this is why I think, it's clearly bad faith, in my opinion, from what I'm hearing especially. And it was an attempt to subvert and steal power. And so the tactics they use are meant to maximize damage to you while minimizing risk to themselves. The general idea is they can cause you more harm by publicly just slapping you in the face without warning, putting you on the spot where you're forced to say, we're okay, we'll do it. Mm-hmm. Whereas if they go to you in private or with an email, then you can easily push back with minimum risk to yourself. Mm-hmm. So they presenting you an open letter at a meeting, common tactic. Showing up with a protest. I don't know if you guys experience any like hard protests, but it's one of the things they'll do, because then these corporations are on the spot right now. Will you say yes or no? Do it or don't. Mm-hmm. And the corporations panic and say, okay, you win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Because who wants to be the target of the next, big thing in the media?
But you resisted. You didn't give in to the demands?
We had the advantages of being the co-founders of the organization, and so having some authority, instead of just maybe an employee who's seeing all of this happening. And like, I don't want to be part of this, but if I speak up, I'll lose my job. And also just being, a scrappier grassroots nonprofit organization. We're not in the spotlight necessarily. We have a lot of work that we're doing around the world, but I just think that it was worth it to us to really like lean into that conversation and try to understand the ideas and be really principled about our pushback to those ideas. And while it was really draining organizationally, like we spent a lot of time on that process that could have been going towards the work that we're organized to do. It was worth it to be able to, in a principled way, say, we're not going to do these things and here's why. That's
essentially the tactic. Mm-hmm. They know that, for a lot of companies, they might say, how much money is it going to cost to do all these trainings and keep having these meetings? Is it going to cost $100,000? How much is it going to cost to just give them what they want? 10, 20? Just do it. Just hire somebody. Just hire the diversity person, whatever. Right. And then we're done with this, right? Mm-hmm. But that's a mistake.
Short-sighted.
Because then you're never done with it. And the long-term effect is that now you live under it.
Yes. Yeah. The appeasing strategy doesn't work.
And for me, it's, again, I love these people. And over a number of years, I don't think, even in talking with them when we started to identify some of the language and we've asked them explicitly, it seems like you might be adhering to some of these philosophies. Is that the case? They denied that. I honestly think it was the truth that they weren't aware of it. That it's something that they weren't taught. It was something that
formally.
Yeah. And it's just something that was influencing their thinking. So my hope too wasn't just to try to, hey, I think that my intuitive sense of this is correct and let's get there as soon as possible. It's like, if you want to treat people well and, be the change you want to see in the world, I want to have conversations where you can actually look at the ideas, and at the end of the day, the best ideas will be the ones that influence your policies as an organization. So it wasn't just to try to hold out and make it annoying because, outlast them. It was really, my hope was that people would come to see that, okay, we can have diversity, but we need to unify around what makes sense for the context of our organization. And then also, again, following the logic of, in terms of that one specific topic, can't there be a way in which somebody doesn't have to compromise their conscience and everybody can be in an educational space together?
Interesting, because, it feels like a Chinese finger trap, right? That most people's instinct would be to try and pull their fingers out as hard as possible. And you guys seem to have leaned in and really made them explain themselves. And it got to a point where they just couldn't effectively do it. They talk about harm, but people are probably sitting around saying, I'm so sorry, tell us about your harm. And then they can't.
I met with every single one of them individually for as much time as they wanted to take because I genuinely cared. I don't want to harm people. And and yeah, I'm sure that they had an experience. That's the thing in trauma too, that like it's not necessarily about the experience, it's about the meaning that you make of it, that it has an impact on you. So it's, even if it's something where it's like, okay, there's no policy or anything that I can necessarily fix or adjust, I still just wanted to hear them out because it was the experience they had was real and I care about them. But yes, we did have, the way that things went where we stuck to the ideas. And then over time too, more came out. So, when George Floyd happened, then that was another big blow up moment of people wanting to hashtag certain things and to advocate and to do things that were just out of the scope of what we considered within our mission. We don't make meaning about individuals' trauma, and we don't make meaning about societal trauma at large. We show up and say, hey, we've got rigorously built tools to help people get through things, but we're not going to make meaning about what you're getting through. That's just out of our lane.
We're not therapists.
Yeah. And so anyways, there's some more, just kind of dissatisfaction around that we weren't being more proactive about that in terms of either advocating using our social media or in terms of doing that work internally as an organization. And so that was part of the story was that at that point, then people started to, and I think this is kind of, moving us forward in the conversation. At a certain point, people were not interested in staying in the dialogue. They weren't interested in looking at the best research that we could find around how to actually, evaluate our policies. And it got to a point where people decided to step away. And what was unfortunate, and I think is also reflective of the cultural moment we're in, is that too often it switches from the ideas that you have being bad to you being bad. Everybody's an individual, and people, when those that did leave the organization all left in their own way and experience, but we were called some names, and it wasn't our ideas that were ultimately the most italicized comments. So
it sounds like, though, you're just on the other side of the culture war now. You could choose to agree with the woke people who are constantly pressuring you, but it sounds like you rejected it, and now you're having a conversation with those who are rejecting, critical theory and the wokeness and all that.
Yeah, I mean, in thinking about why that Twitter thread that I posted ended up, going as widely as it did and bringing a bunch of attention to me, it was that it was just, I was sad, honestly. It was like, this should not be rare, but I understand why it is, because the pressure is so great. And people don't want to see their organization, sued, ruined, whatever, their reputation ruined. And so, like you said, they'll appease, like, okay, yeah, let's do the training. It's no big deal. Let's just do the training. But what they don't realize, and like what to his point about may the best idea win. Sure, let's engage in dialogue. Let's talk about your idea. Let's talk about my idea, and may the best idea win. That is gone, because there is no there's no more of this idea of antithesis, right? Which is how philosophy was done forever, like from Aquinas up until Hegel, was like, hey, I have an idea, I like this idea. Then the next guy comes along is like, no, I have an idea. This is how we understand knowledge. This is how we have a unified field of knowledge. And he bumps that up against the last guy's idea, and they're like, okay, this idea wins. And on and on and on until Hegel, where Hegel says, no, we this rationalistic philosophy project has failed. Like, we are never going to find a unified field of knowledge. So now the best way forward is to take your thesis, your antithesis, and combine them into a synthesis. But what he did in that is he didn't just go from that dude's philosophy to this dude's philosophy. He changed the whole rules of the game of philosophy, which was he established a whole new kind of epistemology, basically saying, well, there isn't really an objective field of knowledge that we can ever find, so let's just do the best that we can to move things forward. So it wasn't like, where you have an idea and I have an idea, one of us is closer to the truth. We're gonna try to align with truth, not just like move the ratchet forward, and he changed that understanding of epistemology. He also changed the methodology by which we arrive at the right solutions. So it's no longer like we're going to try our best to align ourselves with what's objectively real.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.